This December I'm making a Christmas calendar using vanilla JavaScript and HTML canvas. In each one of these days, I'm gonna procedurally generate a unique Christmassy item because I need icons like these around this time, and good free ones are hard to come by. I also want to easily scale and color them in different ways. I hope you'll follow along and implement your own versions so I can showcase them in a special video on the 24th. You'll practice working with coordinates, basic math, and various JavaScript programming techniques. It's a good project, I think, to learn about code modularity, reusability, and how to write consistent code. Today is day 2 and we're gonna draw one of those balls you hang on the tree.
Coding with Radu. Let's code now.
To draw the ball here next to the star, we're gonna go to index.html and define a new function at index 2. Let's call this draw ball, and we will implement this function in its own file called ball.js. Now if we control click this, VS Code creates the file for us. And as a reminder, these kind of functions for drawing the object take the context, the X and Y center point, the size of the object, and the hue that controls the color as a parameter. And let's test if this works by drawing this bounding box around the object. So I'm getting here 2 helper variables that we can use to draw this rectangle, a square essentially, because the width and height are the same. Now save and refresh, and this is what we get. Now to draw the ball, I want to start off by making a ring here at the top that we can use to attach the ball on the tree. And for that, I will start by defining this ring object here. And it's going to contain different properties, like the radius, how big we want this to be. And I'm going to define it as a fraction of a size, so that eventually if we want to draw these at different sizes, they will scale nicely. And let's just draw it at X, so in the center. But then the center of the ring should be quite close to the top. So maybe top plus the radius, basically, if we wanted to touch the top part of this bounding box. And let's define color as well, using the HSL syntax, and I'm just going to use 100% for saturation and 50% for lightness. And now we can draw a circle by using the arc method with the center at ring.x, ring.y, and now we specify the radius, and we have to mention here the starting angle, 0, and 2 pi in radians. This means 360 degrees. And we can set the stroke color to be that of the ring and stroke. Now if we save and refresh, we get this ring up here, and it's way too big. I don't want it to be this size because the ball should be most of the screen here and the ring a very small thing at the top. So let's reduce the radius, maybe like this. And you can see we have a problem because this is not touching the top of the screen anymore, the top of the bounding box. Now that's because this radius value should be duplicated here as well. And this code is not very good as such because I need to remember that this here stands for the radius value. Now you can't use here the radius value as such because this object is not yet defined, but you can do a workaround and use a getter here, like so. We can get the value of I by returning the top plus this radius. And this code is going to use this radius because we will use this getter after the object is defined. So in this way, we get the functionality that we want. And no matter what value you set for the radius, it will adapt in a way that you expect. Let's make this thicker. So I'm going to add another parameter here for this thickness. let's say like so. And for it to affect, we have to set here the line width to that thickness property. And there it is. But I don't want this ring to go outside of the bounding box. You see now the outline is drawn somehow at the center of this circle that we are defining, so it extends outside. We could fix this by going here at this piece of code and maybe subtracting here the thickness divided by 2. And now this is kind of like a full circle. Let's make this thickness be a little bit smaller, like that. And you see that this outline of this circle is now drawn on the inside. This kind of functionality is really common if you look at drawing software. And I'm quite sure we will need to draw a lot of circles in this project. Like if you remember that one video I made about drawing the Twitter logo, it's all made of circles. So it's really a fundamental component when making simple shapes like this. And because of that, maybe it's worth to invest in implementing a helper function, a utility function for drawing circles, easier than messing with this kind of long code all the time. So how would that be? Well, instead of this messy thing here, I would like to write something like draw a circle using this context at ring.x, ring.y, ring.radius. And now here maybe we can have some properties of the circle, like the stroke style can be the ring color, and then the line width can be the ring thickness. And now we could specify that I want the outline to be on the inside. This code is much easier to read than this one from here because, first of all, things like starting angle of the arc, ending angle of the arc, subtracting here, dividing by 2, this kind of complex mathematics disappears from this line of code. It goes inside this new function that we have to implement. And every time we're going to need to do this kind of thing, we don't need to remember the mathematics. It's easier. So I'm going to remove this other code from here and implement this draw object with the circle helper method. And we'll do that in a separate file here. I'm just going to implement it in the root folder, draw.js, and control clicking this creates me the file. You can see it here next to the items folder. And it's going to be an object that we could extend with different methods if we want. So let's say this circle as the first one, given ctx, xy, radius, and some options. We have to implement it in a similar way that we had previously. So first, the arc, using these properties and forcing here the angles to be 0 and 2 pi. And then I can use object assign to ctx all of these options. So if we are going to pass here options that match what the ctx is supporting, then a single line of code here is going to set them to those values. And now we could check to see if we want to fill this circle or not. In this case, the ring doesn't have a fill, so it's not going to execute this piece of code, but it does have a stroke, so it will execute this part of code. And let's just see if this works for now. Save, refresh, and you see it works, but kind of like as before, intersecting this part from here, because the CTX doesn't understand what we mean by this inside outline here. So this is a piece of functionality that we need to implement here by ourselves. Like if the options outline is inside, I'm going to reduce the size of the radius by half this line width. Now save and refresh, and we are now able to draw these circles with an inside outline. Okay, let's begin to draw the ball. So below this ring, I'm going to define a new object to store here properties of this ball. Now the radius is going to be quite big, let's say 45% of the size. And the x value, it's going to be just x, so we want it centered like that. And the y value, I'm going to use a getter here as well, because I want to move it from the top according to the ring radius, but also this radius that needs to be accessible here. And let's set the color value similarly as before. And now we can reuse the draw circle method that we implemented previously with the ball properties. And we're going to pass the fill style now and set that to the ball color. So this is not going to have a stroke. It's just going to have a fill. Save, refresh, and there it is. Maybe we can use a darker shade here for the ring so we can tell them apart. I'm going to reduce this to 30%. Or maybe even darker, let's say 10%. Yeah, it's almost black, but not quite black. Now, controlling the darkness, brightness of these colors could be done like this. But if you think about it, all these items that we are drawing, it might be nice for them to share the same kind of color pattern or intensity variation. And I think that we can go to draw.js and implement here an object for managing this color. So something easy, like we can get the normal color by using the hue and outputting this as we did previously, but now we can copy this a few times and say maybe this is going to be the darkest value, and let's say 10%. I'm going to use just odd values here. So dark, 30%, and then light, 70%, and the lightest, 90%. And with these, we can go now to the ball here and say, okay, the color for this one should be the darkest using this hue. And now this one here should be normal using the hue. And since we have the star already, this one doesn't use this kind of color management object, so we could use it here as well for consistency. And if we decide eventually that we want normal to mean something else, all the objects are going to be affected in the same way. Now save, refresh, and things work the same as before. Let's play with these color values a little bit more, experiment with different shades. And I think that for that, I want to implement a kind of radial gradient here to give this ball a highlight. Maybe this is going a little bit too far. Like, I hope you will still have ideas to make this look even nicer after I'm done with the highlights. But I'm sure you'll figure out something. At least I have that crazy video where I make the ball have our reflection in it. It was a really fun video, and I don't think anybody answered the question of how to make it more efficient. I gave there some kind of hints, but yeah, check it out if you have time and want a challenge. Now, with this highlight, I'm just moving it a little bit to the top left. I'm going to implement a gradient centered at this highlight XY with 0 radius and all the way to, let's just use the ball radius and see how that looks like, and 2 color stops. So the first one, I'm going to try to put the light version, and the last one at 1 or 100%, let's put the darkest version and see how it looks like. And we have to pass this here to the fill style. We don't need this color attribute here anymore. Or you could use it and set it to this gradient. It's up to you. Now if we save, and refresh, we get this. It's kind of dark to my taste. I think I want this normal color to be somewhere here in the middle. Make it look brighter and more colorful somehow. So let's add another color stop, maybe at 30% with the normal version of the hue. Yeah, this is fine, but this radius here where it becomes the darkest, it's too small. Let's try multiplying this by 2. Yeah, I think this looks nice. What do you guys think? We're not gonna need this anymore. And looks like we are not using this left, but we are using the top. So I'm commenting out just this one.